Hello. This yin yoga sequence begins with ragdoll pose and then continues on with a modified version of butterfly pose that I am calling half star pose, and then some reclined twists, a reclined heart opener on some props, either some books or some blocks, and then Milky Way pose and half shoelace pose. Some useful props might be a little bit of wall space if you want to try ragdoll pose and you want to take the balancing part out of the equation. Also, some books or some blocks to generate height during the heart opener and the supported bridge pose. And as always, have pillows and blankets around, soft things to take care of sharp biting pressure points. And the monologue will be contemplating the definitions and the perspectives of a couple of concepts that we have called faith and hope. Allow yourself a little bit of time to settle into your practice. In other words, if you need to take a few moments to find your breath, get in touch with your surroundings and to acquaint yourself and dedicate and find an intention for practice, and do so for these next few breaths here, because we'll start this practice in ragdoll pose and we'll stay there for a couple of minutes. Now, ragdoll pose is a posture that not everyone enjoys that much, and maybe they don't want to go right into such a dramatic posture here, but for other people it's maybe feels really good to do a type of forward fold. So while you're continuing to getting centered, I'll show you what ragdoll pose looks like. It's a standing forward fold. So first you want to take a nice stable stance here. Feet can be together, or they can be hip width, or they can even be wider here. And then you slowly allow yourself to just bend over. Now legs can be straight, knees can be bent. It all depends on how the backs of your legs and how the rest of your body is feeling about this posture here. So the idea with ragdoll is you're trying to relax. The yin part of this posture is in the upper body. So once you get settled into this pose, you can sort of just kind of relax here and soften. Maybe you adjust your stance because you find out that your stance is not what you wanted here. And then you can shake your head yes, and you can nod your head no. And then if you're deciding that ragdoll is actually too dramatic to start off with a practice, then make your way down onto hands and knees. Some alternatives are either child's pose, your favorite version of child's pose, or you can come into this posture where you just lay gently onto your back, hug your knees into your chest, and you can hug your thighs into your chest, or your shins if that feels comfortable. You can just stay here in stillness and continue to ground, or you can gently rock back and forth. Otherwise, if you're deciding that you like ragdoll but it's a little bit too much on your balance, then you can try a wall. Find a little bit of wall space. Come over to a wall. Set up with a stance. Now, if your knees are going to be bent, then your hips are going to move back. So you want your feet a little bit farther forward. So maybe anywhere from 6 inches to 10 inches away from the wall here. And then you gently, slowly fold forward again here. And like I said, I'm just going to settle here for about 2 minutes, which is not really that long for a yin practice here. And I can rest my butt, I can rest my hips up against the wall, so I don't have to worry about pitching over here. Now you can clasp opposite elbows and just let your arms hang here. You can kind of release the tension in your head and your neck here. If this is still too a little bit disconcerting, you can always take some books, or I grabbed a yoga block here, and you can just kind of hold on to the yoga block for a little bit of a security blanket here. I'm not pushing on the yoga block, I'm just kind of holding it just in case I feel a little bit like disconcerted and I'm like pitching forward, then I can kind of gently press back on the yoga block. But I really am trying to relax my upper torso and cultivate kind of these ideas of yin
where I'm resting the muscle and just hanging off of my connective tissue system here. Legs are working, so I'm kind of yawing the legs here to hold myself up. If you're practicing this, we'll try this for about 5 more breaths or so here. So just kind of check in and start cultivating the ideas of yin, this ideas of allowance and acceptance, this idea of softness, this idea of just trusting that as long as you're not feeling injury or pain, that you're setting up for the edge, the traction in the connective tissue system here in the body. So maybe 1 more breath here. And then you can slowly bring yourself down to the floor. Now if you're at the wall, remove your block and just slowly make your way onto all fours. If you were on your yoga mat, then just slowly bend down from ragdoll. Come into a nice table pose. So nice stable position with the arms and the knees here. Nice neutral spine here. We'll do a little bit of cat and cow rolling. Let's start with cow, since ragdoll pose was a forward bend here. So sink the belly, tip the tailbone up, and kind of move the chest forward to create a back bend here. And then head can look down, head can look up. Stay here in cow for a couple of breaths just to counter the forward fold of ragdoll. And then when you feel ready, slowly move yourself into cat. Arch your spine up towards the ceiling, tuck your head, tuck your tailbone, and begin to gently move back and forth. So this is a little bit of gentle yawn activity to work out the stagnation that might have developed during ragdoll pose. And maybe after 1 more cycle, we'll set up for the next long-held yin posture, which I'm calling half star pose. So for half star, you'll sit on the floor with legs extended up front here. And again, if you're someone that has a lot of stiffness in the backs of your legs or in your low back, you might want to sit up on a little bit of height. Turns out, anatomically, even if you're a person with extreme range of motion, you might want to sit up on a little bit of height. But that's a different discussion here. So half star is a modified form of butterfly pose. So butterfly pose is bend your knees, put your feet together, knees come out wide, and you can either just stay seated or you fold forward like this. And if you really like that pose, you can do butterfly. I'm going to do a modified version of this where I'll take your left leg, bend it deeply, bring the heel in as far as it goes. And by the way, if this knee is achy, put some kind of support underneath this knee. And then bend the right knee, but just bend it, bring it in, not all the way. So it's about halfway in. This is why this is called half star here. And maybe it's the right knee that's achy, so maybe the padding goes over the right knee here. So you're almost in kind of a modified form of a cross-legged seat here. You can stay here if you're feeling a lot of traction in your legs and in your hips. But if you want a forward fold, and part of the point to this posture is including another forward fold, just like we did in ragdoll here. But we'll only stay for a couple minutes. So again, fairly short compared to a regular maybe 3 minute or 3 to 5 minute hold. But always allow yourself and give yourself the power to come out of the posture. That's an important part of practice, is to allow yourself to come out if you've stayed too long in a posture. So you can try this forward folding, and you just go as far as you go until you stop. Now maybe you stop right away. Everything is relaxed, your front part of your body is lightly compressed, the back side of your body is opening up. Maybe your head and neck don't like to be hanging, so gather up your props and create a tower to rest your head and your neck on. Maybe I can use these blocks. Maybe it has to go underneath your torso somehow, so I can rest my torso on the blocks. Maybe you can just hang here. So this is where you get creative with your props. Maybe use some books or some pillows or some blankets instead here. Soften, sink, become still, reside here. We'll stay here for about another minute on this side, and then we'll switch sides, do the other side. If you're doing butterfly, that's symmetrical, so you'll just stay there for maybe 4 minutes if that's allowable. The three mechanics, the three principles of this practice is, the first one is called it's called finding your edge. That means you move your body to a point, into a yoga posture, to the point where your body stops. It starts to feel resistance, and for each one of us, that's going to be a different place because we all have unique, diverse, different bodies here. So in other words, the only way you know where your stopping place is if you feel it, because it has nothing to do with how it looks. It has everything to do with how it feels. That's why you need to cultivate focus in the present moment so that you can notice how things are feeling here. And then you stop, you check in with your breath. Notice if this is an appropriate edge. If it is, then you cultivate the second principle, which is called stillness. So we've been still here for a couple of minutes, so we're going to come up. If you were in half star, if you were in butterfly, you can just stay in butterfly. Extend your feet out, maybe do a little moving around with your legs and your feet to work out any stagnation that was there. And then set up for the other side of half star pose. So this time, it's the other leg that comes in close, the other heel. And again, give yourself permission to use support as you need it. So make your version of half star pose, and it may not look anything like what I've got set up here. Again, options are to stay seated or to fold forward, any amount here. And then check in, find your edge by checking in with your internal sensations. When you have done that and it's not injurious trauma or pain, it might be a little bit of stuck discomfort, and that's okay. Then you stay for another couple of minutes here on this side. So you resolve to become still. That requires patience. That requires a certain sense of allowance, to let it be okay wherever you ended up. Maybe your ego wanted to go farther. Maybe your ego wanted to look differently. But this practice is not about how things are looking. It's not about reaching goals. It's about residing in the present moment with what you have and what you are right now. And that's what makes yin here. Final principle is time. So once we finally settled in, now we just hang out here. Now we reside here for a certain amount of time. We'll reside here for about 1 more minute. And so again, if you find your mental state wandering off, maybe it wants to get busy, you kindly draw it back to what you're doing here. You ask yourself, am I in an appropriate place? I.e., am I in a place where I'm feeling something but I'm not hurting myself? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, good, I continue to stay here. Right? So we keep going through the 3 principles like 1,000 times during the practices. Like, am I at a good edge? Can I be still? And then can I stay for time? We only have about 3 or 4 more breaths here. But this idea of yin practice is an exploration of a concept of dynamic contrasting polarities known as yin qualities and yang qualities. So we live in an overarching culture of yang that believes in action and motion and muscle and power and strength. These concepts are useful sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes we have to cultivate a contrasting polarity is the correct and more appropriate idea, and those are the yin concepts where stillness, quiet, passivity, much more useful and much more effective than brute force. Here, we're done with this side of
half star pose. So if you folded forward, use your hands and your arms to kind of help your torso back up. Slowly engage the core muscles in your core to draw your spine back to neutral. And if you're getting really achy from all of those forward folds, you can do a little bit of a twist here. But our next yin postures are actually twists. So maybe lean back, release the half star or butterfly legs, point and flex the feet a few times, shake the legs up, maybe do a little bit of core engaging yang activities. I like to do reverse table here. So reverse table, you bend your knees, you put your feet on the floor, feet and hands are rooted. And then you engage your core to try to lift your hips. The operative word is try. You don't have to worry about lifting them high. You're just trying to lift them as high as you can. And for some of us, our hips won't even come up off of the floor, and that's okay. Slowly lower down, and you can do a couple more cycles of this if you wish. And then we'll get set up for the next yin posture, which is a couple of reclined twists here. So you'll make your way onto your back here. Legs are out long here. And then bend your right knee and roll the right knee into your torso. So head, neck, shoulders, all comfortable. Maybe you need a blanket or a pillow underneath them to make them comfortable here. You can take your hands, clasp them behind the thigh, hug that knee in, or clasp it in front of the thigh to hug it in here. Just for a moment as we get set up for this twist. Some of us might need to shift our hips over to the right a few inches to make it easier to stack the hips, because we're going to take the left hand, place it on the right knee, and then draw the right knee over to the left. So I'm drawing this whole leg and this right side of my pelvic bone over to the left to create a twist in my spine here. And if I ended up on my side, then I don't have a twist in my spine. So I want to draw my right shoulder back to make sure I'm creating some sort of twist in my spine. Now my shoulder doesn't have to be on the ground. My knee doesn't have to be on the ground. I have to be pain-free here. So if doing all of this creates some kind of injury pressure, this is where you start thinking about props. So maybe you need to stuff something underneath this knee if it didn't make it all the way to the floor and it's creating pain. For me, having the knee just float is just fine. I'm not feeling any pain there, so it can just float. Same with the shoulder. Maybe the shoulder floating is unstable, so you can put something underneath the shoulder. Otherwise, it can just float. Some of you, your knee's on the ground, your shoulder's on the ground, you're fine. You're in a twist here. And this time we'll stay a little bit longer. We'll stay a little bit more than 3 minutes on the side here. So head and neck are comfortable. If you're wanting a complete twist in the spine, then you can turn your head and your neck towards the right. The right arm can be extended out kind of as an outrigger here. And now it's just time to stay. If you're not feeling much, you can kind of see if you can bring this right leg down more to increase the twist, to increase the rotation of the hips here, to increase the twist. But it's all about what you're feeling here. And then you settle, so take some time. Come back, notice your breath. Notice the temperature of the room. Notice the little signals that your body is giving to you right now. And this is all useful information. And then when you're settled here, you can start to contemplate these dancing, contrasting polarities that the Taoist philosophers of the East call the yin and the yang here. Some of the traditional ideas of yin and yang is yang is light, but yin is dark. Yang is active, but yin is passive. Yang is like the sun, but the yin is like the moon. Yang is fire and yin is water. Yang is right, yin is left. Yang is top, yin is bottom. So these sound like opposites, but they're not really opposite. Everything has to be taken into concept. So even though we Westerners usually rawly and crudely say yin and yang are opposites, that's not really accurate. What the Taoists would say is, well, they're contrasts. They're contrasting polarities that are always swirling, dancing, and changing here. And so, depending on your perspective, something that is yin in one perspective might be yang in another perspective. And that's why this practice is called yin, because it's kind of balancing out all the yang aspects of our lives. If we do too much, if we have too much of one contrast and not the other, our lives become unbalanced. So yin and yang is actually not about yin and not about yang, but it's actually about finding and maintaining an appropriate balance between the two. Since most of us live in an overwhelmingly yang culture and lifestyle, a little bit of yin every once in a while feels good. That's why for some of us this practice feels pretty good, but we're done with this side of this twist. So when you're ready, maybe take this left arm and help ease that right knee back up. So to slowly ease yourself back onto your back. And you can do this slowly to notice the reverberation. Maybe you weren't feeling much during the twist. Sometimes when you come out of the twist, you realize, oh, spent a lot of time in the twist. You can do little yang activities again to work out some of the kinks. Maybe you do waterfall, or maybe you hug your knees into your chest, or maybe you do reclined windshield wipers here. But we'll set up for the other side of the twist. So when you're ready, legs are out long, and then now it's the other leg. So left leg comes in. Now if you already did the left leg, do the other left leg here. Do the other side here. So give the left leg a hug here for a moment. Maybe you need to adjust the hips, maybe you don't. And then the right hand helps guide the left leg over to the left side to create the twist on this side. And again, if you ended up on your side, the intent of this posture is the reclined twist, so you can melt that shoulder back. Maybe the left hand comes out into outrigger. You can actually play around with where you have that left arm and see how it changes the experience in this left side of your torso, down your left arm here. And if you're wanting a complete twist, then you can turn your head to the left. But if that's too dramatic, then maybe keep your head in a nice neutral position here. And then we'll stay here another 3 minutes or so. So there's a couple of yin and yang concepts that we deal with on a very profound level to deal with being a complicated human being. So we have these very dynamic brains that are capable of deep, deep thought. And two profound concepts that we deal with, that we need to create kind of a healthy mental and emotional balance, is these ideas of faith and hope. Now these are two different words with two different meanings, but we tend to throw these words around. They tend to get blurry as to what we think they mean, to the point where sometimes we just kind of interchange each of these words, even though it is a good idea to pay attention to what we think they actually mean to us. And we all have our own definitions for different words. They're unique to each individual. What we think something like faith means, something like hope means. So I will just contemplate and look at, from a perspective, the basic meanings of these words and how they relate to these dynamic contrasting polarities. We're about halfway through. this twist. So maybe take stock of your breath, take stock of your sensations, take stock of your edge here. And maybe you have to make a modification. Maybe you have to come out of the posture. So in terms of yin and yang, the ideas of faith and hope, meaning that faith is the yin term. Faith is yin because faith is trust. Faith is an act of trust, or a sense of trust that the universe is in, and the present moment is exactly as it should be, no matter what it is or what is going on. So that's simply what faith is, and that's a matter of trust. You have to just trust, even if you don't understand what's going on. And most of the time we don't, so it's a little bit with dealing with uncertainty. So life is inherently uncertain. And we have to trust that even though we're uncertain about a lot of things, we're uncertain about staying in a pose for a long time, that somehow this is the way the universe needs to be here. So we can trust that we're getting done with this side of the twist pose. So you can slowly trust yourself to come out in a manner that's not going to create trauma or injury. And then when you slowly come out, maybe just bring yourself back and just notice what reverberations crop up when you come out. And you can do this by doing little movements again. Again, pick your favorite movement here for a while. Maybe I would just like to do a little bit of a forward fold here. Maybe you have something else in mind. So for a few breaths here before we move on. So the next yin posture is a type of back bend that I'm going to call a heart opening posture. It's a reclined posture here. So make your way up. You'll need some sort of prop to generate height. Now you can use yoga blocks if you have them. If you don't have yoga blocks, then if you have some books and some blankets, then that might be handy here. I'll set up and show you what the posture looks like with blocks, because this is something that's fairly common in yoga classes, so you may have seen this before. So you'll take 2 blocks. They have different settings. I'm placing them on the medium setting. The first block I'm going to lie back on so that my shoulder blades are laying on the block. So I'm trying to get the block underneath my upper spine, my thoracic spine, the spine with ribs coming out of it here. So that's where that's where the main prop has to go. And then the other prop is just to prop your head up to create some support here. The props don't have to be at the same height. They can be different heights depending on taste and accessibility here. So this is what this posture looks like when you're just using a couple of yoga blocks. Now maybe you don't have yoga blocks, so then you have to get creative here. You can slowly bring yourself up. Oh, by the way, this is a modified form of melting heart pose. And melting heart pose is the yin name for puppy dog pose. This is just melting heart pose, just to remind you what it is here. And maybe if you see this and say, oh yeah, I like that pose better, then you can do that here. Otherwise, just going to demonstrate what you can do if you don't have blocks. Take a stack of books here. Remember, you can adjust this for height, so if things feel too high, you can use fewer books. If they feel too low, use less books here. And sometimes the books feel a little bit sharp around the edges. So maybe take a blanket, cover the pillows with the books with a blanket to kind of soften the edges around the book. So this is what's going to go up underneath my thoracic spine here. And then maybe I want some support for my head. So this is where I grab a lot of pillows, place them up next to this stack of books. And then now lay back. Again, I'm trying to get the books under my upper spine, near my shoulders rather than my lumbar spine. And not my neck here. So notice the books underneath my neck, and then I use the pillows just to rest my head on, and then you'll just allow your torso to soften so that your arms kind of just ooze out on either side and your arms are just hanging and resting comfortably on the ground. Legs are soft here. They can be as wide apart as they need to be comfortable here. And this is the pose. So we'll actually stay here for a few minutes. So for these first breaths, you check in with how this is feeling to you internally. Maybe you're fine with this. Maybe, in which case you can trust that you're at an appropriate edge and you go. So you have faith. You have faith that this is where you need to be at. Maybe you're feeling injury and trauma. And so now you need to be dynamic. Now you need to switch to the opposite contrasting polarity, and that is of hope. And hope is basically an expectation. It's a wish that things will somehow be different and therefore better, or a wish that the universe will move in the direction that you want it to move, or change in the way that you think it should change. Somehow it'll change for the better. This is an egoic quality. So it all blossoms. Hope blossoms from an egoic desire for the universe to do or change in a way where the present moment is something different than what it is. And certainly if you're experiencing pain, you use the concept of hope to maybe create a sense of motivation to try something else, to invoke your own self-power. Now, hope is not self-power. Hope is this latent, formless energy, just like faith. So that's maybe what two things that both hope and faith have in common. Is there these positive, uplifting energies that are unmanifested. The minute you try to manifest them, they're no longer faith and hope. They become something else. As they stay unmanifested, these profound concepts are something that we contemplate in our brains and in our minds. So it turns out, in their essence, faith and hope are contrasting polarities. They're actually in a crude way, they're the opposite of each other. Faith is having trust that everything is as it should be, whereas hope is an expectation that things will change in a way that is favorable to your own egoic desires of some sort here. We need both of these concepts. By the way, there's no such thing as good or bad or right and wrong in the yin and yang world. These concepts make no sense to a Taoist. So there is no good, there is no bad. There is just contrasting polarities, and hope and faith are both appropriate and useful contrasting polarities at certain times. The great thing about being a human being is that we have the dynamic range and flexibility to dance either over to faith when we need more of that, or when we need a little bit more of hope to create a proper balance in our mental and emotional lives, in our mental and emotional state. So it's this balance is now a new concept. It's the third concept that we overlay on this contrasting polarity. Well, what is the balance? And it turns out there is a balance here. So we spent quite a bit of time in this heart opener. It's time to come out. And you can do this slowly. Now, You can maybe slowly roll over onto one side, or you can find some other gentle way to bring yourself out. Take your time here. Maybe stay on your side for a while. Just notice if that created a lot of achiness, and slowly bring yourself up. We're going to continue with these back bends. So that was an upper back bend. Now we're shifting simply to a lower back bend. So we'll come into Milky Way Pose, which is a supported bridge pose. So again, we'll need something that generates height. And again, you can use books. You can use blocks. I'll use blocks this time for Milky Way Pose, but you can also use this if you've made a nice pile of books here. You can continue to use your books here. Milky Way Pose is a back bend with the height underneath the low back rather than the upper back here. So you'll come back onto your back. Bend your knees, put your feet on the floor. Take some props. I'm going to use the blocks these times, but you can use books. Use your shoulders and your feet to raise your hips up to an appropriate height for you. Place the block or blocks or books underneath your pelvic bone, so your sacrum. So not your lumbar, not your glutes, but that big flat bony part of your pelvic bone, so that it feels stable here. And then you can either just stay here with the knees bent, or you can experiment with extending one leg out, extending both legs out, so that you get traction on the fascia and the ligaments that run through the psoas, the front of the hip bone, and through the front of the thighs here. Some of us, it's too dramatic, so maybe we do one leg at a time. If you're doing one leg at a time, maybe switch after a minute or so. Otherwise, we'll stay here for a few minutes. And you can adjust the height. So I have the blocks on the medium setting. If I want a more dramatic pose, I can put them on the high setting. If this is creating too much trauma, then I can put them on the low setting. Shoulders, head, neck are comfortable. You might have to rearrange the head a little bit to adjust it. Or maybe put a blanket underneath here. But the idea is once you get here, you soften and allow and accept. So to create a yin attitude requires a little bit of trust, a little bit of faith that time and gravity are going to do their job here. So it turns out we need to juggle. We need to manage, we need to dance with these two very deep and profound concepts, faith and hope, in order to maintain a balance. And it turns out that balance isn't of itself the manager. In yoga we have this concept known as the heart chakra. So the heart chakra is this main energy chakra that comes from subtle energy theory, from traditional yoga. It considers there to be a number of very major important energy centers in the body that are roughly physically located along the spine. The center one, the one in the middle, is known as the heart chakra. And it's significant because since it's in the middle, it's the connecting chakra. It's the chakra that connects all of the other chakras. It's also known as the balance, chakra of balance. So it's the chakra of connection and it's the chakra of balance. So it maintains the connection and the balance of all the other chakras. This is metaphor. This is metaphor, for it is the energy center that maintains balance and connection to all parts of life. It's the energy center that creates balance in our life and connection with ourselves and with the external universe. If you're not from a traditional Eastern yoga background and these energy centers, these chakras make no sense to you, we have another word for the concept of balance and connection, and that word is love. So even if heart chakra Anahata chakra. Makes little sense to you. Our English word is love, and love is the concept of balance and connection. Usually we use this in terms of a relationship between each other, but it's also this connection and relationship we have with ourselves, with everything else. So it's that balanced connection, and it's what balances the connection between faith and hope. So you maintain that faith and hope maintains its dance through the balance, through this balance called love. Maybe we're done loving this supported bridge pose, this Milky Way pose. So we can slowly come out of this. If your legs were straight, slowly bend your knees, put your feet back onto the ground, and again, root through your feet and your shoulders so that you can engage your core, lift your hips enough so that you can gently remove the books or the blocks underneath your torso, and then slowly lower your hips all the way to the ground. Maybe stay here to reverberate. Again, I like a gentle forward fold, so I'm coming back to just slowly bringing my knees into my torso. Again, if this is a movement that you're not really liking, experiment with other things. You can try waterfall, you can try this reclined windshield wipers that I'm doing right now. Maybe it's just like testing ankles, testing knee joints here, see how they're working. And then at some point, roll over to one side, come up to seated. The next long-hilled yin posture is called half shoelace, and there'll be some modifications here. You'll start seated, the legs out in front. And again, you might decide that sitting up on a little bit of height is an okay thing. This time I'm going to sit up on a block. So half shoelace gets into the back, is a gentle hip opener and gets into the back line of the legs and the low back. So wait for modifications here. Bend your left knee and stack your left knee on top of your right leg here. Maybe just see how this feels. Now, if that created pain in the right leg, see in the knee, see if you can create a micro bend in the knee and maybe put some support there to maintain that bend in the knee. So I took a blanket roll, placed it underneath the knee so it's not exactly straight here. Some of you will be fine with an exactly straight leg here. So this is half shoelace. You can stay here. The next step is to fold forward just like we did in half star pose. Any amount here. So you're relaxing your torso, you're letting it round. And then you're stopping and using any kind of supports that you might need in this posture here. And then we'll stay here for a couple of minutes or a few more minutes here. If this is just really painful and inaccessible to you and you would like to create some traction in the backside of this leg, the alternative to half shoelace is actually hand to big toe pose. So you might actually slowly come out of this, make your way all the way onto your back. Bring your right leg in and lift it up, extend it out. Rest your torso on the floor, clasp your hands behind the right leg, and just pull it in until you're feeling something running along the right leg. Now you can use a strap or a towel to wrap around this foot, or maybe some of you can just grab the toes. This is why this is called hand to big toe pose here. And this is a little bit more direct and simple version, and you can control a little bit better how much intensity you're feeling in that back leg. So that's a nice alternative. Otherwise, we'll come back to half shoelace here. If you're finding this to be accessible for you. And you can stay here, or if you would like to complicate things a little bit more and you like to get a little bit of a stretch in the upper body, you can add eagle arms to this so that you can extend your arms out wide And then bring your right arm underneath your left, cross above the elbows, bend your elbows, bring your hands either to your shoulders, clasp your hands, or make prayer hands if you can. Find your version of eagle arms here. Move your elbows forward and up slightly to really kind of pull your shoulders, your shoulder blades apart here for a moment. Then soften all of this. Stay either upright or, if you wish, fold yourself forward with the eagle arms. Now that might generate a lot of sensations in a lot of different places, and then it gets hard to keep track of what's happening everywhere here. So I can feel a lot of stuff going on in my shoulders. I still have to remember that I have a leg that's pretty achy here too. So notice if this is appropriate for you and see if you can maintain doing this, or if you have to do a lighter version of something else here. We just have maybe 3 more breaths here on this side. This is asymmetric, so remember, we've got the whole other side to do here. When you're ready, slowly bring yourself up. Release your arms. Shake your arms out. Bring them back. Lean back so that you can undo that half shoelace. Maybe a little bit of integration here. And then we'll set up for the other side of half shoelace. So it's the left leg that's straight. The right knee bends and you stack the right knee on top of the left leg here. You might have to move the left leg over to the right a little bit. Can stay upright, can fold forward, or if you're wanting, did the eagle arms on the first side, do the eagle arms on this side. So this time it's the left arm that goes underneath the right. Make your version of eagle arms, whatever they are here. And then fold forward if you would like here. And then we'll just stay here for a few more minutes or so. And again, this is getting a little bit pretzel-y, this posture. But remember, you don't have to go terribly deep here. I'm probably not looking terribly deep in this posture, but I'm feeling a lot. And that's all that needs to happen here. And you check in and make sure that things are not too dramatic. And you can come back to this idea of what kind of faith do you have in this posture? What kind of hope do you have in this posture? And realize that these are actually 2 different concepts, and they can both reside peacefully, usefully, and constructively, because they are connected. They are connected through the heart chakra. They're connected through love here. And if that is actually happening, it's very unlikely that you're doing something unbalanced or dysfunctional here, because you'll notice when you need a little bit more faith. You'll notice when you need a little bit more hope, and you'll use love to reestablish the correct balance between the 2. And it's a connection, it's a balance, it's a compromise. So hope won't always work all of the time. Faith won't always work all of the time. You need a dynamic balance of both. That's why love is actually a difficult concept. Love is a difficult concept because it's always changing to create the right balance, to do what's appropriate, rather than doing what one thinks has to be done all the time. So we have about 5 more breaths here. you're ready, slowly bring yourself up. Release your eagle arms. Maybe you have to release the eagle arms first and then use your hands to bring your torso up. Slowly lean back and slowly release the half shoelace legs here. And then from here, maybe clear your mat of props, slowly make your way down onto your back. That was the last long held yin posture before resting pose, before Shavasana. So just a little bit of integration. You can come back, give your knees a nice hug. You can try happy baby pose, a nice hip opener before. So you can bring your knees apart, thread your hands in between your knees, grab your shins, your ankles, or the bottoms of your feet, and then try to point your feet up towards the ceiling. Use your arms and to pull your feet, your legs, your knees down towards the ground just as far as they go. And then you can just stay here in stillness and just notice the pressure you're creating here. Or if you want to, you can slowly and gently rock from side to side here. So maybe a couple more breaths here. And then gently release. Maybe give your knees one last hug. If there's any other kind of final movements that you would like to create or make before moving into your final posture of stillness and of rest, then do that. And always remember you have the options here to sit in quiet meditative posture, maybe do legs up the wall, or if you have, like I always say, if you have your own favorite restorative posture, this is the time. This is the time to set it up. Otherwise, I'll just lay here in traditional Shavasana, which is arms and legs extended. Arms wide enough from your sides, far enough from your sides so that your palms can rotate up, face the ceiling. Maybe legs are fairly wide so they can either comfortably roll in or roll out depending on what your natural tendency is. Shoulders, back of your torso, head and neck are comfortable. If you're feeling chilly, this is where you grab some clothing or some blankets to create warmth. If your neck is feeling kinked, this is where a pillow might be really handy. If your low back is feeling a little bit too compressed or achy, then maybe a prop underneath your knees so that there's a slight flexion in the knees here. So take just some time to set your posture up here. And then begin to melt, begin to sublimate here. Allow the stress, the tension in your entire body, from your head down to your toes, to just kind of just sublimate away here. And give yourself the courage, the power, and the permission to let it be okay to reside in the current moment. This is of course an act of trust. This is an act of faith. To believe that the current moment right now is actually okay. And to hope, to bring the hope in line with faith. And that creates that requires love. So here's an experiment that you can do. So again, drawing on traditional yoga here. So in some traditional yoga philosophies, subtle energy philosophies, the left side of the body is considered the yin side. So that's the side of faith. Allow that side to soften and relax and just reside, to just exist and to just be. So the right side of your head, right eye, or left side of your head, left eye, left ear, left torso, left arm, left leg, left hand, left toes, all of them soft. And just notice your left side. Breathe into your left side. After the next breath, shift your mental focus over onto the right side. So in the subtle energy theory, It's often believed the right side is the yang side of the body. So that would be the side of hope. So take some time to notice the whole right side. Notice the right side of your head, your neck, your mouth, your jaw, your rib cage, right side of your torso, right arm, right hand, right hip, right leg, right foot. Just breathe into that right side, the side of hope, for a couple breaths. And then, if you're thinking to yourself, well, this is kind of silly, just thinking about the right side and the left side. I'm not made up of a right or left side. I'm made up of a whole being. And the answer is, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. So you're made up of both a left side and a right side. You're made up of both hope and faith. And it is all connected together through the great connector, through the great balancer of the heart chakra that we, in our language, know as love. So maybe you can feel, maybe you can just notice that balance of connection and compromise that's running through your whole complete being. Begin to bring your thoughts back into the room. You can start to deepen your breath. Maybe you want to make little gentle motions with tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes. And then you begin to translate and expand that motion into hands and into feet, maybe into arms and into legs. You can gently rock your head slightly from side to side. And when you feel that it's appropriate, you can gently bend your knees and gently roll over onto one side. Stay there for a moment and cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for your practice, your efforts, your balance of yin and yang, your balance of faith and hope. Cultivate a deep sense of gratitude and love for you, your true self, your unique manifestation in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're ready, slowly bring yourself up to a comfortable seat. When you get there, bring your hands together in front of heart center. So I'm ending this practice with an Om. You can either listen or maybe join in. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.